Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Legend of Ben on PokerStars.
I'm one of your other hosts, East Coast Sam. Welcome to our second episode on WSOP Europe. This year, we're going to be talking about the 2009 WSOP Main Event.
You notice, Sam, we are gamers at heart here, whether it's poker or other games. I'm such a gamer that my door is actually open. It's always open for you.
Ah, very nice, very nice. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about High Stakes Duel as well, which of course started with Antonio Esfandiari and Phil Hellmuth. So very clever one, Ben.
Thank you. And really, this particular European main event is sort of the origin story of the creation of this program by PokerGo called High Stakes Duel. But before we get to High Stakes Duel, let's start from the top here. This was the third ever World Series of Poker Main Event Europe. Unlike main events when they were kind of in this poker boom era, we're not really seeing a substantial increase in the size of the field, which I guess, when you're in Europe, a lot of the American amateurs or satellite players, you have to factor in the costs of a trip to Europe,
right.
To it, it's going to hurt your profitability. But I'm really surprised actually that just the European poker scene was not more in the mix here, considering that really in the late 2000s was when European players were, becoming a bit more of regulars in the main event in America.
Yeah, I mean, we talked last time about this sort of Russia versus the world ethos that was established during 2008. Here, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of American players and Canadian players, of course, that make a deep run to the final table. But it is very interesting that they do choose to focus more on these American names. To be fair, I mean, these are the players that are the most famous. These are the players that appear at the feature table most often. So it kind of makes sense. But yeah, I mean, not as much of a European presence at this European event that you'd expect.
Yeah, and so while the actual size of the field and the prize pool is pretty comparable to the 2008 main event Europe, this actual main event bears a lot of similarities to the 2009 American main event, not just in the tournament structure, but in the production of these episodes. Mm-hmm. We had talked about how the 2008 Europe main event broadcast is a very unique beast. It kind of combined a couple of different styles into one, and to make for a very unique main event that kind of stood out. This main event kind of loses some of that unique identity. It kind of falls back more towards the mean of the American broadcast as far as the table structure, as far as how much time goes to the featured table, the outer tables. And for me, it really kind of was a bit of a letdown when I watched the first couple episodes, as I was really excited to see maybe a continuation of the 2008 style.
Yeah, I mean, the 2008 style was very different after spending so much time looking at the WSOP in America, and especially getting used to the style that really took form toward the latter end of the coverage. So yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to more of that, and there's still a little bit of that feel. It's still a little bit different in comparison to the American version, but it starts to lose a little bit of its unique identity, especially when they have a lot of these players who were featured so heavily in the American version. That, again, there's a benefit to that in that these guys have a lot of personality. They're very good players. We get to see a lot of exciting stuff. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of these other players who I don't really know as well.
Yeah, and because this is a very similar field to the year prior. Again, there's a lot of top pros involved. That's always great. But I felt that, again, just impressionistically, it was a considerably weaker main event. Not bad, but in my notes, I found myself constantly saying, wow, this was the weakest European main event episode we've covered so far. And that kept happening in the middle part of this tournament. And then, so, I mean, there's still some highlights, as there always are, but definitely a bit of a letdown compared to the expectations I kind of had going in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, each episode does get through a lot of hands, and we see, a lot of, obviously the feature table is the main focus of each episode, but we do get quite a few hands from a bunch of different players. Not necessarily as much of a narrative building as we've seen in previous years, though there is a little bit, there is a winner's edit, there is a second place player's edit who does get a little bit of more focus than the other players. But yeah, I mean, I do kind of wish there was a little bit more of that style from last time and a little bit more of a firmer structure with everything.
And to the point about structure, so this main event, again, aping the American main event, having the starting stack be 30,000 chips, which was a new addition in 2009 in America.
Hmm.
They used the same physical poker chips as the '08 tournament. So again, we haven't really talked about the chips being used in the main event in a while because
Right.
it kind of stayed the same for forever. But that was the case in '09 as well. With 2 day ones, again, kind of splitting the field into two halves. One of the biggest problems of the day one episodes here is that they actually, much like in 2017, kind of split the episode not in half, but in about like 2/3, 1/3, where they
Yeah.
change both of the featured tables. And again, the action is so brief when you only have like 12 or 13 minutes to show two run your tables that it kind of just feels like a throwaway. I'd rather just they stuck to the main two tables when the episode began and just sort of skip over the table change because the action wasn't really all that memorable in either case.
Yeah, I mean, the action early on isn't super memorable. I mean, we get plenty of people that you've known in years past. We get Phil Hellmuth. We get, people like Patrick Antonius. Brunson's in there. Mercier's in there. A lot of, sort of just a grab bag of different players we've known and expected in years past. And again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I just would have liked a little bit more streamlining in there. And, it's interesting how they kind of have the feature table. We mentioned last time that it was a little more sort of open air, the sort of floor layout. You could almost walk up to the tables and sort of watch them. This year, they have the feature table almost enclosed. There's sort of a purple lighting and there's more sort of formal seating. So it creates this sort of more focus on the feature table, which is, kind of funny given how much they focus on the feature table in these episodes.
Yeah, it definitely they made a concerted effort to sort of separate the feature tables to be more like the American broadcast. Again, taking away some of that identity that we really liked from the '08 Main Event Europe. Luckily, we got a couple of pretty good table draws for the featured tables in episode one. Hellmuth arrives late with a Caesar of Trumpet's entrance. That's always good stuff. He tops the norm on the first hand, like he did back in '06 on day one. He makes a folding top pair. It's some good Hellmuth stuff, which is good because European Hellmuth is always just as well as American Hellmuth action. Doyle Brunson shares the feature table with Hellmuth, which again, it's pretty rare we ever see these two guys besides maybe the big game where we see Brunson and Hellmuth at the same table. That's always kind of fun too.
Yeah, and it's just their rapport is just funny because it's almost like the straight man and the foil. That Hellmuth is sort of like the foil, and Doyle Brunson's like the straight man. I mean, I think my favorite moment in these early episodes is just like Doyle just kind of talking about like I should kill Hellmuth or something. It's just just kind of odd to see that. It's funny.
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, Hellmuth kind of had adopted this new poker style in '09 in the American main event when he was on that day two table for a couple episodes. And we kind of see a little bit more of that Hellmuth style here. It's not quite as, say, amusing as the sort of side bet side plot with Elia Lesra in '08, but it's still good to see Hellmuth nonetheless heavily involved in some meaningful action in the main event.
Yeah, and then speaking about some other players, we have Jason Mercier popping up, making a lot of money out of Ace King, and then this kind of odd moment after where he busts a player and he goes, "I'm Jason, by the way," like introduces himself, which I thought is interesting. It's just, a little thing to slip in there, given that he makes a deep run and is a big presence later on. We also have Todd Brunson mixing it up. We have Cunningham in there as well, and Hellmuth and Cunningham have a rapport with each other. But yeah, I mean, at this first episode, it's the Phil Hellmuth show. They give him multiple segments talking about, on the humbler side, mentioned that his competition's catching up to him, that he made 0 final tables. Which again, it's a blessing and a curse because Hellmuth is just such a personable guy. But I also, again, wish we had maybe seen some of the more outer tables, some of these other players that we've really come to respect.
Yeah, I don't have really any highlights from the outer tables. There's so much a lessened focus on the outer tables. Again, we kind of had that documentary feel in '08 Europe where they kind of roll around and you just see so many characters and players involved, both that we know and don't know, and that's just become considerably less of a focus here for the editing and stuff. So that was, it's one of the ways these day one episodes struggle for me a little bit. Again, I thought it was a pretty decent episode until maybe the last third when they changed up the tables and there wasn't really as much meaningful action at that point.
Yeah.
Again, it does plant the idea of this is a drastically different kind of main event production than '08 though. So it serves that purpose, whatever value you want to put into that. Whereas episode 2 covers the second of the 2 day ones. Yeah, this again with two pretty interesting final featured tables: Negreanu, and then Oberstad, Sam Trickett, Barry Greenstein, Chris Ferguson, Shaun Deeb. Some pretty cool names to watch in action here. You would think, I mean, it's a bit more of a narrative to this episode, but it gets to be kind of a boring episode for me. I thought this was the weakest Europe episode of up until the 10 that we would cover chronologically up until this point.
Yeah, nothing super exciting. I mean, everybody kind of stays within their paths, within their lines. We hear a little bit about Annette Oberstad, how online players have more experience than live players. It's kind of interesting to think about the differences between online and live players. Mm-hmm. We have a little bit of John Jawanda. The sort of focus of this episode is, the two previous champions coming back to prove if they've got what it takes. But yeah, I mean, nothing super exciting. I mean, we get, a funny hand at the end between Negreanu and Deeb, which, yeah, I mean, just your smile says it all. Like, that's just the highlight of the episode.
Well, I'd mentioned that back when we were covering 2011, when Norm had mentioned this when they were at the same table on day 3 of 2011. Let's discuss it. I think this is a really good debate point here. Who was in the right? Who was in the wrong? I personally think Shaun Deeb 100% correct. Mm-hmm. Because Negreanu, even when he talks to the director, he misquotes himself when he's explaining what he said when he was making the raise. Mm-hmm. I think when the action was originally happening, Negreanu said something like, "I'm gonna pound you back a little," and then when he quotes himself to the director, he said, "I'm gonna kick it up a little," which mm-hmm. I think changes the whole direction of what he was saying. Up means raise. Pound you back a little. I mean, you could considerably think that as I'm going to call and then like beat you afterwards in the hand. Like that's ambiguous. Whereas Negreanu was I'm not sure if it was malicious or if he was intent. Maybe he thought he said that. I don't know, but just by virtue of I think he was right to begin with, and then Negreanu was being maybe deceptive in the first place. That's my stance. What about you?
Well, just to go over the action of the hand, just so that everyone knows what we're talking about here. Negreanu limps. Shaun Deeb raises it to 1.6, and then Negreanu raises it to 5.4 with an action that kind of makes it seem as though it's like a string raise. Now, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't think it's a huge deal. Negreanu isn't somebody who really does antics like that, string raises, trying to throw people off like that. I think it was just sort of an innocent mistake. He did intend to raise. And Deeb also is just, the type of guy who's very prickly. I mean, back in 2016 when, Vorniku said, thank God, and Deeb immediately goes like, you shouldn't have said that. I think Deeb could have just let it slide, honestly. I'm on Negreanu's corner here. I don't necessarily think it was that big of a. I don't think it was a big.
Well, he had chips in 2 different hands and put them in separately. I mean, he puts in the call and then puts in the raise.
Well, I mean,
actions, man.
I think it happened quick enough. It wasn't like he puts in the call.
The chips were in separate hands. If they were in the same hands, different story. Different hands, different story.
Well, that's a lot of chips there to handle with one hand.
They're like 3 chips each. I mean, come on. They're this is their always thing. It's like he has like 2 chips here to make a call of like 1,000 more, and he's got like 3 chips for 3,000 more right here.
No, if it was like this. Then this, that would be like a string raise, but it was like boom, boom. It was
the hands were not moving at the same time.
Yeah, but it's like, again, it was within a second, I think. I think it was like boom, boom. It wasn't. It
was like, I'm pounding back little. Boom, boom. It was like that. And don't forget, it's 2x speed, man. So it was slower than you think it was.
And also, I mean, I'm going to pound you back a little. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's indicative of a raise. I feel like that vernacular.
It can be, but not when you're putting in chips at 2 separate actions of putting them in the middle.
But I'm going to pound you back a little doesn't make sense for a call. I feel like it makes more sense for a raise.
Well, you said I'm going to have to pound you back a little.
I still feel like.
All right.
I'm the English major here. I feel like that was more indicative of a race.
We'll let our listeners be the judges and juries of others. But it's kind of nice that we have opposite opinions. Maybe we can have some third parties break the tie here.
Perhaps, yeah.
In any case, it was just kind of a chain of hands that were going against Shaun Deeb. He was losing a lot of his chips once he had moved to the featured table. Again, I think it was a bad ruling. I think that because if it's even the slightest ambiguous in poker, you can't be ambiguous. It has to be clear cut 100%. It's like the absolute value in math. You have to be like, it's either yes or yay or nay. It's not like, oh, maybe. No, you can't have that in poker. It has to be defined.
Agree to disagree.
All right. When they have they break the secondary table in this episode and they bring a new table, we get a beardless Alex Keating, like we had seen Gordon Vail in the previous main event Europe, baby Vail, and now we see baby Keating, no beard. Totally looks entirely. It's amazing how different someone can look with no beard versus like a full beard. Like it's
crazy. Yeah, like I wouldn't have recognized him if his name was Alex Moore or something. I would have been like, who's that? Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Really, the only note I have for this episode otherwise is it's pretty impressive how many surprisingly short stacks there were that given what we know about the final outcome of the tournament, how they managed to make it from that short stack to the end of the tournament, such as Negreanu, who probably mentioned at least like 10 times he was down to like 9,000 chips or something on day one and then makes to the end.
Mm-hmm.
That's just an example of some impressive final outcomes.
Yep, and JRB busts again, by the way. Just gonna leave that out there.
I mean, it's pretty rare we get a scenario where Scully to win can bust JRB. So that's again one of the perks of these very small main event Europes.
Very true.
Episode 3 gets us into day 2, where we've lost. Again, there was about 330 or something players, 334, and we had lost a little under half of the field heading into day 2. And day 2 will just about a little over half will survive day 2. So again, just over a fourth of the competitors will remain. And really, again, table 1, Esfandiari Hellmuth. This is kind of really why we wanted to cover this episode. These two television programs together because of this action here. This just this one hand that happens on table 1 between the two of them.
Yeah, and this hand is played on the first episode of High Stakes Duel. Yeah, I mean it's the highlight of the episode for sure. I mean, seeing Esfandiari and Hellmuth just have that great rapport with each other. They're both giving it to each other. Neither of them's backing down, and it's just hilarious. I mean, it's great.
Well, so this hand, Hellmuth has a Jack-8 with a short stack. Esfandiari a few more chips than him with Queen Jack. So Hellmuth's already dominated. Flop gives each of them a pair for their non-Jack cards, and then the turn river pair of the third card on the flop with a 10. So the board is Queen Jack 8. No, I'm sorry, it's a like Jack 8, 10, 10, 10.
Mm-hmm.
And Esfandiari makes an overbet all in on the river. And that's really the point in the hand where I think Hellmuth could have folded. I think that, I mean, what kind of bluff is just the idea of what is Antonio bluffing with and what he's value betting with. I just think that the math does not work there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he could have gotten away there, just waited for a better spot.
And I'm not convinced that Hellmuth's like, oh, you're just looking at it comes to 10 so you can move in like that. He's not moving in anyway. It doesn't matter what the card is. I mean, there's literally no card that can come that's going to save Hellmuth besides a 2-outer on the river anyway. So it's just a bad spot with Jack 8 of all things.
Yeah, I mean, the hand plays out. They're not really talking to each other during the hand. After the hand's concluded, they talk to each other and Hellmuth walks away. And then there's this interesting thing where it like cuts to them later on. There's a different hand between Negreanu and a couple other players. And then it cuts back to Hellmuth and Esfandiari talking to each other like far away, like somewhere else in the casino, just like jousting with each other. And Hellmuth's like, oh, you played this way and this is why you don't have as many titles as you should. And Esfandiari gives him a hug. It's just like PokerGo had to have seen that and gone, High Stakes Duel, we got to do that.
Well, I mean, even as Hellmuth steadily leaving the table after he busts, and then Esfandiari goes, sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. I want to play with you every day. My door is available, Phil. And then, of course, the epic 100 grand and gets shot with a taser line by Esfandiari. Now, High Stakes Duel doesn't have the taser in there. I'm pretty sure it's not legal to do that. But good stuff by Esfandiari, who, again, was kind of in that Phil Lock Esfandiari sort of, these wacky poker ideas and bets. That's clearly part of the inspiration of that. And again, the talk after the hand off the table, like away from a play on a brick or something like that.
Yeah.
And Esfandiari, saying that, I've outplayed you probably, even though Hellmuth's like, well, you got so lucky, you held over me for, you think anyone else has held over me ever, but it's again, the karma of that. I mean, Hellmuth's kind of in some bad karma there, but the poker karma, I guess, will eventually even itself out to some degree at that point.
Yeah, very true. And I mean, before, this is the highlight of the episode, but also just going over Hellmuth's entrances, and then, him talking to Doyle about how he loves drama and how every sport has to have one guy who gets laughed at. It's just like, it's not Hellmuth, I suppose, is the focus of this episode. And it's just like, it's just so good to see all these character moments from him. It's very funny.
Well, Doyle and Hellmuth kind of bring up this debate: are his entrances good or bad for poker? I don't know how they can be bad for poker. I mean, it's not like it's entertainment. It's like the WWE. It's just funny. Hellmuth can take a joke of himself sometimes too. I mean, he's coming in as an army, as Caesar, as a race car driver. It's just funny. I mean, he's not impeding the flow of poker when he comes into the entrance and stuff. And it's just, for me, it as a poker fan, I like it. So I would assume most poker fans enjoy it. So therefore, it's good for poker. Yeah,
I mean, it goes back to that whole, Alex Powers guy, who's calling with Jack High. And I remember the other players at the table saying, like, poker's such a beautiful game, you shouldn't be doing things like that. And that was in 2004. And here we are in 2009. We're still having people who just take this so seriously. It's like, have some fun. Yeah. You're playing cards. Lighten up a little bit.
No, I agree with you there. There's a couple of decent hands on the other tables. We get an amusing 9 high against 10 high battle on table 1 once that original table breaks. Victor Blanc goes for this unreal, crazy bluff against a trip aces, which does not work, but just the balls to just go for something crazy like that was pretty impressive, even though it failed miserably. And then we do see pocket kings of all hands fold pre-flop to aces, which is, again, always something I'm going to point out as a highlight in poker.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of good little moments. I mean, none of those hands take too much time. Which is nice. It just keeps the steady focus on Hellmuth and Esfandiari, which is good. It's nice to get out to the outer tables there.
Yeah, and so again, it's a pretty solid episode all around. It's definitely the Esfandiari Doyle show in many ways, but and with a little bit of Hellmuth in there too, of course. And definitely my favorite of these three in 09 Europe so far. Unfortunately, things kind of take a downturn in episode 4, with really the exception of one hand that I just is possibly just in my top 10 hands of all time, just because it's just so funny for me. It happens with table 1, where once again Doyle Brunson finds his way back on table 1 after joining later in the episode. He basically plays one card poker of a couple of guys and ends up doubling up with his opponent drawing dead by the turn. So, and when he shoves on the turn, it gets called. So, but the best part for me is when, Doyle sees one ace, puts his chips in, and then it cuts back to him, and he looks at the other ace, and he has just the funniest non-reaction at all on his face. And he's up against ace king of aces of all things. And for me, I laughed so hard. It was just one of those laugh out loud moments for me.
Yeah, it's as I mentioned before, Doyle's the straight man. So to just see him just no reaction with those aces is just terrific.
No, it was good. And this episode does finally give us our first brief shot of Barry Shulman, who maybe he'll do okay in this tournament, but not quite Peter Eastgate bad how late in the edit somebody gets their first screen time, but he's not really shown at all, despite being briefly flashed on the screen once here. This episode brings us down to the money bubble with 36 players left. But again, besides maybe that one hand, I mean, the main table did have the top 2 stacks when day 3 began, which is kind of cool. Just not quite that next level that I'm looking for in a entertaining episode.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the other hands, nothing super exciting. They give a segment to this guy, Doherty, who's this young guy who's got his family there playing poker, but he's not really that special. They give John Tabatatai a mention after he busts, but, nothing really happened. I mean, he busted with aces against sevens. I mean, that's always kind of sick. Yeah. But Nothing really super special about that. Yeah, I mean, nothing that much to hang your hat on with this episode. I mean, Negreanu gets a little bit of a segment with Kara Scott talking about what stacks should be doing at this point, that big stacks should be bullying other players, short stacks should be trying to mix it up, double up. So that, the tension in the room is starting to get down a little bit here, but we're still not quite at the money bubble yet. So the tension is not that present.
Yeah, and we should mention that one of the recurring bits was this thing called cab chats, where Kara Scott would interview someone in the cab. And as far as they already did have kind of an amusing story about cab change in episode 3.
Yeah.
And then Kara Scott obviously does talk to Negreanu what she said about the bubble and stuff. But again, nothing as viral as, say, a football to the face from the nuts or something like that. But again, there's only like 1 or 2 of these bits per episode, so there's definitely a decreased focus on providing that sort of stuff. When we had a little bit more of that in 08, actually, with a little bit more culture to it, which I have mixed emotions about that change.
Right.
And so at the halfway point here, because this is an 8-episode main event broadcast, day 4, episode 5 in this case. We're basically in the money. Again, the dollars are still pretty small. It's not the biggest field, so even the top prizes are still kind of on the smaller side by main event standards. But again, with only 4 tables left, action can kind of cut around to all the tables, and everyone who's alive still at some point probably had appeared in the edit up till this point. But I thought it was a pretty big dud of an episode, honestly, even though it showed some more of our favorites and at work.
Yeah, lots of shoves, double ups, shove busts, just a succession of those hands over and over again. They hype up this guy, Hauerlinko, who's the chip leader, but he doesn't really do anything exciting. I mean, he doesn't really do anything interesting. He seems like a nice guy, but nothing really super great about it. We get a little bit of Negreanu, sneaks his way in there, but he busts Scotty Wynn. Nothing super special there. Doyle Brunson doubles up. That's nice. That's about it. I mean, I don't know. There's really not much to say about it.
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of another clunker of an episode when I really didn't find that there were any in 08. And we kind of have 2 or 3 here in the first 5 of 09. It was really kind of a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's really an episode that's designed to get us down from 4 tables down to 2. That's effectively what the episode is.
Mm-hmm. And then episode 6, moving along here, is the second part of day 4, 18 players playing down to 9. And unfortunately, much like some of our complaints of some of the most recent American main events, a lot of these bust outs in this, 2 tables down to 1 are really forgettable. Like, we don't know really any of these players. And really, besides Doyle Brunson, we didn't know any of these players. So none of these bust outs really are meaningful. And there's actually only 1 bust out in the first quarter of the episode, which really kind of makes the rest of the bust outs pretty rushed by the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the pacing's just very off. Nothing super exciting. I mean, here we are at the final, the bubble at the final table. A little bit of tension, I suppose. Nothing that much. I mean, it is interesting to hear from Barry Schulman, because keep in mind, this is 2009, the same year that his son made the final table. Here he is on the verge of making the final table. A little bit of intrigue there. And also Jason Mercier rules the world in this episode. I mean, let's be honest. Couple, little things to hang your hat on. But yeah, fairly forgettable overall. I
mean, there was only 2 bust outs in the first half of the episode. And so you are rushing in 7 bust outs in about 22 minutes. And so that's pretty much just hand, bust out. We don't see big chip leader lose a line of chips and then go out or something like that. There's no real flow or narrative to the action. And it's a shame, because this is actually a pretty headline-worthy final table. I mean, we have Antoine Saout, we have Aikenhead, who were both final tablists in 09, so they kind of did similar to Demidov did in 08. And then you have obviously Daniel Negreanu, Barry Schulman, who, again, Jeff Schulman's father, and then Jason Mercier. So again, over half of a final table kind of have some meaning to the action there. And it just seems like this is definitely one of the more dull final table bubble episodes really in main event history.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing to really get in terms of substance is just how Jason Mercier did. I mean, he's at 3.2 million when the day is over. Aikenhead is second in chips. He's at 1.4 million. I mean, Mercier knocked out so many players in the home stretch. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of his game. How exactly did he maneuver his chips up till this point? Just not really mentioned beyond just him busting out everybody.
Yeah, and Negreanu is the short stack at this final table, which he was kind of short stacked for a lot of 2008's final table. But again, props to him for making back-to-back final tables. It is obviously not nearly as impressive as say a Mark Newhouse or Dan Harrington, but still takes some skills to be in this spot to begin with. So again, it's a weak episode, but to this main event's credits, the final table is pretty good.
Yeah.
I will. It's in two parts. Part one goes from 9 players down to 4. Again, Mercier, chip leader, way ahead. Negreanu short stack. 2 09ers from the same American main event year. It's a pretty solid lineup. Unfortunately, the hand histories of all these hands were not numbered on WSOP.com, so I couldn't write down the hand numbers for the edit, but there's a pretty good flow of this player is climbing, this player is rising, frustrations, bust out. It's a pretty good balance in this first half, considering that they were really pushing the narratives of the players that were the big names, which makes sense considering how far they get in the final table.
Yeah, I mean, we get quite a good mix of everything. I mean, right off the bat, we have Barry Shulman, who is established as being a tighter player, morphing into the Incredible Hulk to steal a line from Norm. Also, Bonzi, who is sort of the hometown favorite, mixing it up a little bit. But yeah, Negreanu just manages to maneuver his stack really, really well against Mercier, against a lot of the other players at the table, doubling up, really managing to make himself known at the table. And I mean, the bust outs happen more toward the back half of the episode, and they occur at a steady clip. And Aikenhead gets 9th the same year he gets 9th. So you can say that he did Mark Newhouse before Mark Newhouse. And I would have liked to have maybe seen a little bit more from each of the players who busted out, like, Harlinko, we didn't really get super amount from him. Bjorn just seems like he was card dead, didn't really get anything going, which is, a shame. I would have liked to have seen, just a little bit more from both of them. But overall, it's a fairly solid episode because, again, we just get Negreanu maneuvering his stacks, Mercier going down, Bonzi mixing it up, and then Barry Shulman just picking these good spots and managing to show a little bit of a different image than he had before.
Well, it's a strong narrative for the top 4 players at the cost of the other 5. But to the respect of the editor's credit, there is that there really wasn't that much to go on for the other 5 players because of their stack size and just how the action unfolded. So I think they were wise to focus on the players that were actually involved in the action most heavily, and it really works because it's one of the best final table narratives for Mercier and Negreanu in particular, I think, of all the final tables in this format that we've seen because of just the ups and downs of a long final table.
Yeah, and Mercier seems like a guy who, I've seen him in previous shows, just seems like a fairly straight-laced guy. He actually gets frustrated. Like, you can actually tell in his face and in body language. He's like, I'm the massive chip leader, and here's Daniel Negreanu at my heels. I mean, it's incredible to see.
And pretty incredibly, by the end of this episode, the final 4 have fairly even stacks. I mean, they're not separated by very many big blinds. So it's as great as Mercier's lead was at the start, it kind of shrivels up, and he's now in 3rd when the final half of this final table takes place. And with that, it's really anybody's game when you're so close together like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, Barry Shulman is the short stack when 400 play begins, and he manages to double up on the very first hand of episode 8 against Bonzi's Kings on a flush draw, winning. And again, it just seemed like it was Shulman's night just kind of hang in there, and then finally, it's kind of like a Joe Hashem where he kind of has a middle stack in the beginning, and then just kind of hangs in there, and then just goes on a rush at the right time to really close things out.
Yeah, I mean, he does get lucky. I mean, he shoves with Jack 10, and Negreanu calls him with Ace Queen, and Shulman manages to hang in there. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's good for him, all things considered. But yeah, I mean, this is also very much an episode that focuses on Daniel Negreanu. Right off the bat, it's like Daniel Negreanu is in position to win his bracelet, and they give him a bunch of segments, and it's kind of an odd an odd edit to have when he's going to get second place. Here's Barry Shulman, who's he was paid his dues, been around for a long time, was the CEO of Card Player Magazine, had definitely done a lot to promote the game, and it kind of feels like he plays second fiddle to Negreanu here.
That's true, and the first half of this episode takes us down to two players, Negreanu and Shulman, and that actual heads-up battle, while not as long as the Rwanda heads-up battle from the year prior, 5 hours in real time, and it is again a very, very back and forth thing. There was so many backs and forths in that heads-up battle that they couldn't even show really half of it in the edit. They only really had time to show a couple of key hands where Shulman gets lucky and doubles up through Negreanu. When Negreanu was at one point, this was entirely absent from the edit, very, very short, fought all the way back until that Queen Jack Aces hand takes place, and then that's when things kind of fell apart. But again, a very entertaining heads-up battle from what we did see, at least, even if you get the sense that Negreanu should have won. You're just kind of like, yeah, on ace-5 against aces, really? But again, the kicker, of course, being the hand where Negreanu flops a pair of jacks on a queen, a jack 8-5 board. Shulman has aces. Negreanu turns a jack to reduce Shulman's outs to 2 outs, and of course Shulman hits it to double up, and from there it's Negreanu is way out chipped and would bust in the very next hand of the edit. There's a couple hands later in real life, and Shulman takes it down.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that hand is just crazy. You could tell on Negreanu's face when that turn comes up. He's so emotional. He's so ready to put the bracelet on his wrist, and then the ace gets turned over. Oh my God, it's just
that hand would be so traumatic for Negreanu that a couple of years later in the main event Asia Pacific, he would have flashbacks of that hand and kick the table in anger against Martin. Luckily, he would win after that, but clearly it was a triggering memory for Negreanu back then. So
yeah.
So again, it's I think a very good heads up and a pretty good lead into the heads up with Bonzi and Mercier's fall. So all I think was definitely an above average final table for what was ultimately a pretty below average main event.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the final table was very solid. We know who the top 4 are fairly well. All things considered, I would have liked a little bit more. We didn't mention this guy Ristola, who got 5th place. He was in there, just didn't really get too much from him. Yeah, there's just a little bit, the magic was a little bit lost with this one. I mean, I liked how in 08 they leaned a little bit into it being in London. They had Norm out in the town talking to London people about different poker terms. They had that little bit with the taxi cab thing, but not as much as I would have liked. But still, there was a lot of entertaining moments, mainly from Phil Hellmuth and Antonio Esfandiari, some from Doyle Brunson as well. So there's enough, each episode has its own moment, but I just kind of wish that, again, there had been a better through line and better story building overall.
Yeah, I said that I would have given 08 Europe like a strong B, like BB+. This probably is like a B-.
Yeah.
Even though it's not as good as 08, I still think it's a lot stronger than, say, 2018, 2019. Again, it's good seeing so many, it's kind of like kind of gives that one drop mentality where every player we kind of know. And so that's always going to add to the novelty factor of it. And again, in a very solid final table, particularly with that 2-outer by Shulman to basically win the whole thing. So all in all, again, not as funny as American main events, definitely fewer jokes and fewer attempts at sort of that style of entertainment. Shulman, not a particularly memorable winner. We didn't see any Shulman poker until episode 6.
Yeah.
And so that's a bit of a shame, but I'm glad we watched it. I just think it could have been better.
Quite right. Absolutely.
And again, this main event really leads into High Stakes Duel being kind of the impetus for that program being formed. A very unique structure, kind of like boxing. You have like Mayweather against whoever. Hellmuth is Floyd Mayweather, and who can they bring in to challenge him for the title? That's kind of the vibe I got from this program.
Yeah, I mean, they just let these two guys just have at it. A lot like a boxing match. It's a good analogy that, boxing, it's 12 rounds with these long rounds and very short breaks in between. I mean, these two guys just went at it. They clearly have a rapport with each other. I mean, they knew exactly the 2 people they needed to get to make this show happen. And yeah, I mean, I like the format of High Stakes Duel, that they just give plenty of time for these guys to go back and forth. They're both deep. There's really nothing in terms of off limits in terms of what they could say. They yell at each other. Hellmuth gets out of his chair at one point, and we just see a lot of very solid poker playing.
So the actual structure of this is it's a heads-up match, sit and go. The winner has to win 3 rounds in a row to cash out, so to speak, with the exception of the later rounds in the sort of the pay pyramid tiers, where it'd be 2 in a row after, I think, like round 5 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy like that. The buy-in to play doubles, and the one who loses has the option to re-challenge, or if they don't, then somebody else can step in, and if they don't, then the winner just gets their money and it's over. Each season is kind of like one, staircase of matches.
Right.
Hellmuth against Esfandiari was kind of High Stakes Duel 1. Again, the 50K buy-in, playing for $100,000, doubling each time. Nick Schulman and Ali Najad in the booth giving commentary. It was filmed and played in the Aria. And there was kind of 3 elements to each round. One was being the hype show, then the weigh-in, and then the match. I never watched the hype show or the weigh-in. Just seemed like a waste of time to me. I don't know about our listeners here. And then the match itself, these could be hours and hours long. And these were, not shown live. These were already filmed and then shown. They kind of could cut out a few of the dead bits, but otherwise it was all the action. Every word spoken at the table was shown. Breaks were obviously skipped because it was all edited. And the actual poker structure, though, would be slightly different here and there. The blinds, the starting stack, the levels, even how long each level was. So each one was not exactly the same compared to the previous one or the next one. There was a shot clock and time extensions also.
Yeah, but again, there's still plenty. These guys are still deep. There's still plenty of time for them to play. And again, it does really go back and forth throughout just episode 1. I mean, Hellmuth is down at one point, then manages to just chip back up. A lot of great, poker playing here. And, it really is about these 2 guys just talking to each other and squaring off against each other. Though I do wish, Ali and Nick are a great team, but sometimes they would talk over Hellmuth and Esfandiari. They, had a lot to say, which is no big issue, but I just kind of wish they'd held back a little bit more. They do manage to do that in episode 2 a little bit better.
Yeah, so round 1, each player had 300,000 chips to start, blind for 20 minutes long. This first round only took 2 hours and 36 minutes, or 119 hands, which sounds kind of long to some, but really compared to some of the matches we'd get later, it should be pretty on the short side. And again, they're wearing masks. This is during the pandemic. It was an effort to kind of provide some poker content that was brand new and kind of exciting during the first year of the pandemic. And again, Hellmuth Esfandiari was kind of hyped up as this big rivalry, even though really it had not really been much of one in probably really a decade prior to this match taking place. But nonetheless, it was kind of fun as a half throwback and half sort of real time, real sort of drama. And again, Hellmuth takes down round 1, and as a Hellmuth fan, I mean, I'm a fan of both of these guys, but I was kind of rooting for Hellmuth to win because it's just kind of fun when the number 1 player kind of backs it up, even if, when he talks he's the best one. And by virtue of winning that first match, it kind of just endears me for him to root for him like the rest of the way, because it's just kind of fun when the guy just goes undefeated and just like takes all these lumps from the whole poker world, just kind of puts up the results.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't necessarily rooting for one or the other. I just wanted to see some great play. And you do really get that in this episode, as well as a lot of talk. I mean, Esfandiari yells at Hellmuth about ordering a hamburger, which is just hilarious. I don't quite know whose side I take in that one, but, anyway. Yeah, I mean, Hellmuth wins the first episode, and then, it just steamrolls through the rest of High Stakes Duel, not just with Esfandiari, but with everybody else pretty much. It's crazy.
Yeah, round 2 goes pretty well for Hellmuth as well. Round 3, I mean, by round 3, Esfandiari, I mean, each round, both players can adjust. They can see the footage. They can make adjustments. But it just always seems like Hellmuth is just that extra half a step ahead of his competition and can pull it off. And again, we love table talk and poker. And they're probably like 80% of the time that they're talking, one person's talking, and that just makes this entire thing worth watching. Because it always starts kind of friendly, maybe a little angry, then the guy kind of mocks them for being angry. Then it just keeps escalating, and it just is just comedic gold. And again, the poker play is fun too, but it just having both elements, the peanut butter and the jelly, makes it a great sandwich.
Yeah, and they also they don't cut to clips too many times. I mentioned before how they cut to that clip from the '09 Europe event. They do that very briefly in episode 1. They don't do that too many times in the other episodes. But they will show like the emails from the players up on screen. It's really, there's a couple like really funny moments where they show emails of Hellmuth and Esfandiari back and forth talking about when they should start playing poker for High Stakes Duel. It's just really funny to just see the passive aggressive, you cock your fist, I pull out a knife, I pull out a gun, just back and forth dialogue between the two.
And by virtue of winning the 3 rounds, Hellmuth takes home $350,000 cash, just like that. Which I'm going to have to. I can only assume that about the popularity or success of this program. It's probably not very hard or very expensive to make. Resulted in a season 2 coming out with Daniel Negreanu, fresh off of his marathon of poker against Doug Polk previously against Hellmuth. And again, I would argue the table talk is a significantly more friendly between the two of them compared to Esfandiari. He's a little bit less, punches thrown, but Hellmuth puts up, does not shut up, and somehow, I mean, I couldn't believe it. It just crushes it 3-3 love in season 2. And each of these rounds would take considerably longer than the first season. The shortest match with Negreanu was 4 hours and 45 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with slightly differing structures for each round, but nonetheless. And I think that's by virtue of Negreanu being a little bit less of a payoff wizard than Esfandiari. That's oftentimes, we get that one extra bet called by Esfandiari maybe on the river in his matches, which kind of led those matches kind of taking a little bit longer. But each match in of itself has its own flow of one player being short stacked, fighting back, coming back down. Just a great flow, and it's never dull because Hellmuth is just always just poker entertainment in gold form.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen all of High Stakes Duel, all the episodes. I would definitely recommend, because they are so long, trying to watch them at 2x speed, or find moments where the poker play really starts to get dynamic or the talk really starts to get interesting. It is nice that we have the full match unedited. It's just, it can be a little too much to sit through in one sit-in, for instance.
And PokerGo did make some videos highlighting the top 5 hands from each match.
Yeah,
so that is a way just to kind of get a taste of, instead of watching 5-6 hours of poker. But I think as a diehard Hellmuth fan, Esfandiari fan, Negreanu fan, it just was really fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And much like any third entry in a trilogy, or the Rocky trilogy or something, if you're look at it that way, things finally break formula in High Stakes Duel 3, where Hellmuth finally, now he does take round 1 against a very popular sports analyst, I guess you'd call him. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he's on ESPN or Fox Sports or something like that. After finally taking down one player, not only does Hellmuth not win the next match, it's against someone that was brand new. It was not playing the same person 3 times in a row. It was this time Tom Dwan steps in, he'd been having this sort of return to the poker scene on Poker After Dark or whatnot. He was kind of back in the swing of things after kind of being out of the picture for the late 2010s. And Tom Dwan actually beats Hellmuth in round 2 of High Stakes Duel 3.
Yeah, it's funny that it's Dwan of all people, because have you ever seen that infamous heads-up match between Dwan and Hellmuth where Dwan has the 10s and Hellmuth has the aces? It's almost perfect that it's Dwan who's finally the one to unthrow Hellmuth.
Yeah, and as someone who was rooting for Hellmuth the whole way, I was definitely frustrated by this loss. But to my delight, he actually, in a rematch in round 3, Hellmuth takes down Dwan pretty convincingly, and getting back to that 1 win in a row that of 3 in a row that you have to do before Mr. Scott Seaver, after Tom Dwan couldn't make it into round 4, steps in. So again, kind of a revolving door of opponents for Hellmuth, excuse me. And Hellmuth once again puts up against Scott Seaver. Scott Seaver takes his loss in pretty gracious terms. doesn't make a big spectacle of it like Esfandiari might do when he's like, Phil, so lucky. And round 5, unfortunately, has not happened yet. I think it's happening in a couple of weeks. I think Seaver is returning for round 5, I believe. I forget. No, it's Jason Kuhn. Excuse me, Jason Kuhn going to get in there, and it's kind of fun. It'd be 2 players that I actually have met and talked to in Vegas. So unlike all the other matches, I have not had the pleasure of meeting both players. This time, I'll be a little conflicted because I've met both of them. So, and if Hellmuth can pull us off, he'll take down all the money, and he'll be able to cash out because of 3 in a row. And so there's a lot riding on the line, more than any match before it, right here in round 5.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, if Jason Kuhn can pull it off or not. I, of course, am hoping that Eric Pearson steps up to the plate and decides to do High Stakes Duel, which I don't think Hellmuth would agree to, but that would be funny.
Because round 5 will be $800,000 each to buy in, making it 1.6 million. It's tough. You have to wonder, where does that rank as far as the a freeze out of like a sit and go match, heads up match, like where that ranks on the the highest stakes of all time, like as far as like an officially like documented and like filmed game, not just like some side game someone had once upon a time in their basement in Vegas or something.
Yeah, it's got to be up there. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, and so again, some folks might complain that it was kind of boring to have the same guy win 7 in a row, but considering High Stakes Duel is really just kind of like Hellmuth versus the world, if you do it that way, then it works. It works for me.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. Yeah.
So overall, High Stakes Duel, I definitely recommend to poker fans, or if you haven't checked it out. Probably if you have PokerGo, you probably have watched at some point. But
yeah,
nonetheless, I'm very excited to see how round 5 unfolds. And if Hellmuth does somehow lose, I want to say perhaps that at that point is when it's winning 2 in a row would let you cash out. So Kuhn would be 1 win away from winning the $1.6 million match. So should be, and obviously I assume these players are buying out some of their action to other players because that's how the poker world works. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can go either way.
Yeah. But I think of that kind of concludes our talk of this chapter of poker history. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. We apologize for our bit of a break that we had for a few weeks there. We were kind of taking the end of the summer as kind of a break before the fall rolls in.
Yep.
And, I'm excited to continue more of these podcasts, and I think on our horizon have a very, very special guest coming up for an interview in our next episode too. Should we tease it or should we just tell them? What do you think, Sam?
Well, let's work out our arrangements with our guests before we make sure we have this person down before we lock it in. But yeah, I mean, we'll keep going with the WSOP Europe. If there's any other events or shows you want us to talk about, feel free to let us know in the comments below, and any questions you want us to answer, or if anybody's interested in being on the show, let us know and we're happy to have you on. Yeah,
we're as we enter into the fall, we're approaching the 1-year anniversary of my trip to Vegas, and so it's kind of crazy. I think it's almost been a year since then, but a lot's happened since then, and I'm looking forward to it. Again, if you guys have any comments, questions, requests, let us know. We're on Facebook, we're on Reddit, we're on YouTube, and we're on 2+2. So find us and let us know your thoughts.
You can almost say our door is open.
Anytime available. Okay. Anyway, guys, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, enjoy your poker on TV.
Take care, everyone.